Welcome to Beyond Impressions. I'm Bandy, Vice President of Marketing at Marketron, and with me today is Rick Ducey, Managing Director at BIA Advisory Services. Thanks for joining us.
It's always a pleasure. Absolutely. It's great to be here with you.
We've got a lot of topics I want to pick your brain on.
Okay.
Let's start with the political and gambling markets and what we're seeing there, this big rise. Tell us your thoughts on that.
So, they're very exciting markets for broadcasters because it's a great insurgence of new revenue. So political, of course, is cyclical. Every 4 years in a general elections, there's a big influx of money. A lot of that goes to over-the-air television. More of it has been directed to digital and now to connected TV as platforms because of the ability to target, which is really helpful. For OTA, it's great for reach, and then for the digital media, it's great for targeting. And connected TV kind of joins us together. So this year, 2022, is a midterm year, so there's going to be a nice spending lift for everybody in media, particularly in the 13 or so battleground states where the fighting's a little bit more fierce, a little bit more spending to happen there, which is always good. But we're seeing maybe $8.4 billion total political spending for 2022. 2024, there'll be more spending with the general election. But so the political is something that's one of my favorite jokes is if you ever get hired to run a TV station, try to get hired in an odd year because you know you're going to get a nice revenue lift from political in an even year, so you can claim credit for revenue growth. Yeah, so political is very nice. 22 will help the TV, radio broadcasters earn some revenue back where they lost some traction because of the pandemic over the past couple of years. That is cyclical. Gambling, on the other hand, is secular, if you will. So that's one-time money that keeps the gift that keeps giving. Yeah. So as the states turn on, there's a dozen or so states now that have laws allow gambling. And so if you can do that, obviously you want to advertise for it. So that's a nice influx of new money as well. And that's perennial money. Every year it's going to be there. So that's a constant lift. And a lot of that also goes to over-the-air TV and to digital. So the political's nice. In the midterm years, it's nice. In the general election years, it's even nicer. For gambling, in terms of revenue structure, it's a great way to have a new source of revenue, diversified a bit.
I mean, it's a whole new category.
It's a whole new category, and it's one that's going to keep growing. I mean, there is a limit to growth there. Not all states are going to allow gambling and advertising, but to the extent as more states come in, there's going to be more revenue. So that's something we watch very closely.
On that, do you have a sense of when you think it'll sort of stop being a hockey stick, right, and sort of flatten out?
We may actually be getting close to that because it gets to what state legislatures are actually going to pass it. And politics is a messy business to try to predict.
But it's driving revenue, so it's okay.
Pretty much, yeah. So we love revenue, and I guess we love politics. But I mean, so it's gambling. So I guess we place bets as to which states are going to allow it next. And a couple of big states could come in, and if more smaller states come in, it's better. It's gravy on top of what already is a great new revenue category, just like you're saying.
You've mentioned a couple of tactics, OTT and CTV. I mean, if you watch the space at all, you know those are just skyrocketing, right? Top of the charts. Do you see that continuing, and what's next?
Sure. So the one thing, just to level set OTT and CTV, is differentiated from, say, video display market. Video display, typically people see that as short form video, maybe pre-roll, mid-roll ad inventory, sort of the dancing cats, if you will. It's getting better than that. And then OTT, really the way the market has adjusted to terminology, OTT is used to mean long form, more premium video. And OTT is watching that long-form premium video on any device over any platform. CTV specifically means TV sets. So it's OTT, general category, long-form premium video, and even sort of standard 30-second units, say. I mean, you can do 6-second units. There's a lot more flexibility. You don't have to have a 30-minute show with 24 minutes of content and 6 minutes of ads or whatever. So that's good. And it's become very competitive with linear TV and complementary to linear TV, both broadcast and cable. say, and VPDs. So that's a huge category. Now when people say OTT from an advertising perspective, what they're really talking about primarily is CTV, and that is 90% plus of the impressions and the ad spending. So that's kind of what we're talking about from a platform perspective. And our forecast is for this year, 2022, we're seeing about a little over $2 billion spending in CTV, and that's about a little more than 10% of broadcast TV, and we see that's going to grow year over year. That's sort of on a 50% growth curve, so it's growing fast. And some categories really love it. Auto loves it. The supply chain has kind of hit auto, and they've backed off some of the local advertising, but they predominantly spend in digital, and they love CTV because it gives them that over-the-air brand safety and premium video, but the ability to target and see attribution. So auto's a good one. Political is a great year for connected TV for political. They've done so well, political campaigns and advocacy campaigns generally with the digital media because of targeting. Now you get that TV screen engagement plus all the digital targeting and attribution tools. So that'll continue to be a high growth category.
I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. So streaming's been in the news this week for two reasons, right? We are hearing Netflix sort of, subscribers are going to drop. Maybe we're going to introduce an ad-supported model.
Right.
And then on the other side, CNN Plus had a very short run at it, right? Just 3 weeks.
Right.
So there's a lot of talk about what streaming is going to be or not be. How do you see, let's start with the Netflix example. I mean, what does that do to the market? Does it help? Does it encourage other streaming platforms to spend more in their on an ad-supported model, or does it give them an advantage to say, oh, maybe we back off?
Right. Yeah. So it's in any industry, pick an industry, you see this kind of Cambrian explosion at one point where this works, and so there's like everybody's
there's demand. Let's
exactly.
get it. Yeah.
So we don't exactly understand what the demand is. We don't exactly understand what the supply needs to be to satisfy that demand in the market. So let's just start trying a bunch of stuff.
Sure.
So pharma, auto, mining. I mean, any industry. When something connects in the market, people get excited. So you start to see innovation and entrepreneurship and venture capital.
Yep.
So we've been through that phase with streaming and connected TV. Back in the day, Netflix was odd. We don't really understand what this company is.
Well, remember, originally it was a DVD in your mailbox, so we were very surprised.
Exactly, yeah. And it's people were kind of trashing the vision, Reed Hastings, of what they were doing with streaming. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes in the streaming market. Mark Cuban, who kind of started streaming on the audio side, at this NAB convention years ago, was talking about AudioNet and then Broadcast.com, which he eventually sold for almost $5.5 billion to Yahoo. He was on stage and people were listening to this audio like baseball games, and they said, that audio sounds like crap. That's never going to be threatening to radio. And then he stood up there, took the question, and in perfect Mark Cuban fashion said, you're absolutely right. It does suck, and it's never going to be worse. And so it was kind of like that with Netflix. In the early days, it was kind of scratchy video, but now it's 4K and beautiful. So for Netflix, Reed is awesome at pulling rabbits out of the hat. So for years, they're massive. They are streaming video.
Yeah.
They have everybody from a demographic perspective. They reach everybody. They have like fantastic metrics and data and analytics on the audience, and their focus was get people on board with unique content and then original content. And then you see there's so much money in streaming, and there's zero barrier to entry. You and I could start a streaming company right now. I don't recommend it necessarily, though. And so I mean,
we have fabulous content.
Of course, no question, absolutely. So I mean, you see, so Netflix says, we define the category, we own the category, and then you see the rise of ad-supported and ad-light kind of things to reduce the price tag, and then you've got the AVODs, the ad video on demand. You've got the FAST, the free ad-supported streaming TVs. So you see these innovation entrepreneurs coming into it, and those classically in any industry, when you have an explosion of companies, they start to either fail or get aggregated through M&A activity. So we're seeing that, and so the space has been defining itself. Now there's, if you want to get streaming TV services, you can go direct to consumer, say like Sinclair with their Ballet Regional Sports Network. You can go to different platforms like Tubi, Pluto, Fubo, EIO, kind of thing. So there's like hundreds of those services, and it's too many, so the market has to rationalize. So you start to see some failures, and then, with the ownership change at CNN, it's like, how can we monetize our assets? And so it's like, people love news. They've been consuming it like crazy over the pandemic years. So let's take one of our flagship content areas, CNN, and put a plus on it. And everybody's going to have a plus.
Sure.
So our streaming service will have to have at least one plus on it. But I recommend we use 2 pluses.
Ooh.
Yeah. So CNN Plus, if you think about it, CNN, their audience is a news demographic.
Right.
Streaming demographic is becoming much broader, but it's still a younger demographic. So you're taking flagship content that goes to a news demographic, which is not a young demographic. You put it on a platform that's appealing to younger demographics, and then you charge them $8 a month for it. And they're like,
there's some misalignment there.
yeah. And so it wasn't even a month. I mean, so they out-Quibi'd Quibi kind of thing.
I'm not sure that's a good thing.
No, it's not. So, I mean, it's personally, and I guess professionally, I'd like to see the attempts at innovation, because you don't necessarily know what's going to work. But yeah, so that was a fail, no question.
Well, I also think it's interesting. I mean, there has been so much innovation, so many vendors coming to market, but it happened during a period that was atypical, right? I mean, the time people had available to consume streaming services during the pandemic, I mean, let's hope that's not the way the future looks, right? So they sort of had this great, perfect world that they may not be able to replicate again. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts all of it.
No question.
Let's, kind of stay on the innovation front a little bit and talk about ATSC 3.0, NextGen TV. It's everywhere here at the NAB conference. It's everywhere.
It is.
And I guess it's not everywhere, but it's getting everywhere, right? The rollout is happening quickly. How do you feel adoption's going?
So the adoption, ATSC 3.0 NextGen is a classic two-sided market. So the demand side has to do something, and the supply side has to do something. So on the supply side, meaning the stations and the networks, they're adopting ATSC 3.0. So like you're saying, it's 40% of the U.S. population has access to one or more 3.0 signals, 50%, 60%. I think by the end of this year, Pearl's predicting it'll be on the order of 75%, which is very significant in terms of adoption by stations and making those set of signals available. So that's interesting to some market segments, having that kind of access to the U.S. population. The other part of the market is the demand side, and that's what a consumer is going to do. So consumers have to buy ATSC 3.0 devices, TV sets, media gateway devices, Fire Sticks, Chrome. So there has to be a lot of adoption in hardware. The software layer is kind of interesting. So you have the distribution layer, which is 3.0. The software layer, that whole app environment, is built out from connected TV. So like Sinclair has released their broadcast app, open source, anybody can have access to it. NAB's done some work, Pearl's done some work with Run3 TV. So that the app layer that sits on top of the distribution layer is fairly mature, still needs a lot more work, but that's sort of interesting. So from a consumer perspective, I would now like to buy a TV service that's going to be distributed to me over an ATSC 3.0 platform. Hopefully the consumer has no idea what that connection is, because they're just clicking on an app on their TV screen and getting it. There'll be some efficiencies from the broadcaster perspective, and the margins will be different than going over a CTV platform. But eventually, that's going to come from an advertising supporter perspective. Like my friends in the agency world, what they're interested in from a consumer and advertising perspective is targeting advertising. So they want to do like dynamic ad insertion. So they can do that with 3.0 because it's that hybrid environment. They broadcast out, and then they have the internet connectivity. So you can do nice geo-targeting and audience. You can activate different audience segments and target them. So it's very exciting. I don't see that getting to scale for 5 years or so. And probably the lead in this area is Sinclair and Rob Weisbord, one of my favorite visionaries, but he kind of put that number on it. The agencies will say we need to get to 50% consumer penetration in the market before you have enough consumers to target against.
There's been some interesting conversations around it. I think there's going to be a lot of applications that we don't even realize yet coming. It's going to be fun to watch.
Hopefully, I get excited about the innovation, and I think you're right. I have a lot of confidence there will be some cool things coming.
Well, excellent, Rick. I appreciate your time today. Thanks for
You
joining
bet,
us.
Poe.